Myles Garrett is used to being respected. So is Trey White. Sean McDermott made that clear in his recent remarks. How elite talent deserves elite preparation. But tucked within that praise was a statement that turned heads. His open support for Shedeur Sanders, a quarterback on an entirely different team. McDermott didn't just talk football. He talked culture. And he made it clear that Sanders, despite being a rookie, deserves the same standard of respect. Something Kevin Stefanski has failed to deliver. It wasn't just odd. It was telling. This wasn't about compliments. It was about contrast. McDermott's handling of his stars highlights what Cleveland is missing. A system built on belief, attention to detail, and long-term investment in talent. Stefanski's reluctance to affirm Sanders, even with clear progress on the field, points to a deeper organizational hesitation. If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed. The risk? That doubt metastasizes into lost potential. If the Browns want to build anything lasting, they'll need to start by respecting the quarterback they already have. Sean McDermott isn't one to toss around compliments for the sake of it. So when the Buffalo Bills head coach stepped to the mic and delivered pointed praise for Shedeur Sanders, eyebrows went up. Not just because of what he said, but because of who he seemed to be calling out in the process. His words weren't just a nod to a talented rookie. They were a quiet explosion aimed straight at Kevin Stefanski and the Cleveland Browns. McDermott didn't hold back. He spoke about Shedeur's impact on the Browns' offense, highlighting how the young quarterback had already made the team more dangerous. That kind of statement carries weight, especially coming from a coach known for his disciplined, no-nonsense approach. But the real shock came in the contrast. While McDermott showered Sanders with credit, Stefanski, his own coach, had been vague, noncommittal, and frustratingly restrained in his praise. Kevin Stefanski, on the other hand, has been the definition of lukewarm. When asked about Sanders, he's leaned on generic coaching phrases. He's learning. He's developing. We're evaluating week by week. These aren't words of confidence. They're hedges, and they've been consistent, even as Sanders continues to step up on the field and move the chains. It's not just what Stefanski says, it's what he doesn't. There's been no public acknowledgement of Sanders' leadership, no recognition of his role in elevating the offense. It's become increasingly hard to ignore the possibility that Stefanski is intentionally downplaying Sanders' contributions. Whether it's personal, political, or tactical, the undertone is unmistakable. Something's not right in Cleveland. And Shedeur? He's kept his head down. He's done interviews, sure, but he hasn't taken the bait. Instead of stirring up controversy, he's kept the focus on execution. He speaks about team goals, next steps, and staying ready. But even in his carefully managed answers, you can sense the pressure. The subtext of being in a system that doesn't fully support him is impossible to ignore. For a rookie quarterback to show this level of maturity while navigating organizational turbulence is rare. And that's exactly what McDermott seems to be highlighting. This isn't just about talent. It's about resilience, poise, and the fact that Sanders is thriving despite the environment he's in makes McDermott's praise land with even more force. Didn't stop at Sanders. He went out of his way to acknowledge Myles Garrett, calling him one of the most disruptive defensive players in the league. That kind of respect shows how elite coaches approach elite talent. You prepare for them. You game plan around them. You don't dismiss or underutilize them. You don't let ego get in the way of recognizing greatness. It's a playbook Stefanski doesn't seem to be using. Because if you're willing to ignore what Garrett brings to the table, or worse, if you're trying to downplay Sanders' impact for the sake of politics or control, you're not just mishandling your talent, you're sabotaging your own team. McDermott also mentioned Trey White, his own cornerback, as another example of grit and excellence. White's dealt with injuries, setbacks, and long recoveries. But according to McDermott, it's his attitude that sets him apart. The tireless work ethic, the refusal to make excuses, the hunger to come back better than before. That comparison wasn't random. Sanders, too, has been pushing through adversity. Not physical injuries, but structural ones, an environment of doubt and second-guessing. And just like White, He's handled it with maturity and resolve. That's the culture McDermott believes in. One that lifts players up. One that doesn't play politics when talent is staring you in the face. It's no secret that Shedeur made his debut under less-than-ideal circumstances. In the preseason game against the Rams, he showed glimpses of why he was such a high-profile draft pick. But instead of building on that momentum, the Browns' coaching staff seemed to hesitate. Game plans became conservative. Opportunities dried up. And Stefanski's post-game comments barely mentioned Sanders at all. From that moment, a pattern began to emerge. Even as Sanders improved week to week, the messaging from the top stayed the same, distant, generic, and cautious. And now, with McDermott's comments echoing across the league, it's clear that So where does Andrew Berry fit into all of this? The Browns GM hasn't publicly contradicted Stefanski. He's backed the coaching decisions, at least in front of the cameras. But there's no mistaking the disconnect. This is the kind of situation that tests front office alignment. Because if Berry really believes in Sanders, and he should, then silence only adds fuel to the fire. This isn't about micromanaging play calling. It's about organizational vision. And right now, that vision is blurry at best. McDermott's comments weren't just a coaching contrast. They were a challenge to Berry, to Stefanski, to the entire Browns infrastructure. Step up or risk watching another franchise reap the rewards of your own mistake. And let's not forget what's at stake. The Browns are in the middle of a critical stretch. Every game matters. Every decision is under a microscope, and the quarterback position is not one you can afford to mishandle. But here we are, watching Cleveland fumble not just snaps, but strategy. This isn't just about wins and losses. It's about culture. It's about whether you're building something sustainable or letting internal politics tear it down. Other teams are watching. Other quarterbacks are watching. And when word spreads that Cleveland doesn't back its rookies, that it second-guesses its own future stars, that kind of reputation sticks. It impacts free agency. It impacts morale. And eventually, it impacts the scoreboard. There have been moments this season where Sanders has been inexplicably sidelined. Series where he barely touched the ball. Drives where the play calling made no sense. And all of it under the excuse of evaluating. But let's be honest. What's really being evaluated here? Sanders or Stefanski's grip on power. This is how generational talent gets wasted. Not because they aren't good enough, but because the people in charge can't get out of their own way. Sanders has the tools. He's shown the flashes. What he hasn't been given is full support. And the longer that gap persists, the more damage it does. Not just a career, but to the Browns' future. During his most recent press conference, Sanders was asked about McDermott's praise. His answer was as professional as ever. He thanked him, said he respected him, shifted focus back to the team. But again, it was what he didn't say that spoke volumes. No mention of Stefanski. No nod to his own coaching staff. The silence was deafening. It's not hard to read between the lines. McDermott's public support felt like a lifeline, a reminder that somewhere in this league, someone sees what Sanders is doing, and more importantly, someone respects it. That kind of validation matters, especially when it's lacking at home. If you watch Shedeur's performances this season, the pattern is clear. When the coaching staff lets him run the offense, it moves. He makes smart decisions. He protects the ball. He doesn't force plays. The rhythm is there. The confidence is real. But those moments are always temporary. Flashes that quickly get shut down by coaching decisions that feel more like damage control than development. Whether it's yanking him after a single bad drive or reverting to conservative schemes, the Browns have shown a disturbing tendency to walk back progress. Other teams see these moments and immediately adjust, double down on development, and give their quarterbacks the reps they need. Cleveland seems stuck in neutral, scared to commit, and terrified of what growth might reveal about their current regime. After a string of games where Sanders performed well enough to earn some serious praise, Stefanski was asked about his quarterback again. His answer? More of the same. We're continuing to evaluate. It's a process. There's a lot of football left. And not once did he give Sanders a kind of endorsement that signals real trust. This isn't how successful franchises operate. Coaches who believe in their quarterbacks say it with their chest. They build around them. They adjust game plans to suit them. What Stefanski is doing, intentionally or not, is creating a climate of uncertainty. And that kind of instability is poison for a young quarterback trying to establish his footing in the league. Which is why Sean McDermott's comments hit so hard. Because this isn't just coach speak. It's a signal. A veteran head coach, mid-prep for a game, goes out his way to call another team's quarterback a problem. Says he's making the offense harder to stop. That's not just a compliment. That's a coded message to the rest of the league. This kid is for real, even if his team doesn't get it. And let's be honest, NFL coaches don't just say things like that on accident. Every press conference is calculated. Every quote is strategic. McDermott's choice to go public with that take was deliberate, and whether he meant to or not, he peeled the curtain back on a situation that's been brewing for weeks. The Browns have had multiple games this season where they look like two different teams depending on who was under center. With Sanders, the offense stretches the field. There's more movement, more tempo. With anyone else, it feels clunky, mechanical, and overly scripted. But instead of embracing that shift, Stefanski keeps acting like it's a coincidence. Like the boost Sanders brings isn't real. But it is real. It's on film. Defensive coordinators are seeing it. McDermott confirmed it. Everyone outside the building seems to get it, except the ones making the decisions inside it. Sanders himself has kept the drama at bay. In his interviews, he stays composed. He talks about preparation, about earning it every week. You can tell he's trying to avoid rocking the boat, but that pressure is real. Every week he's not named the clear starter. Every time he gets pulled early, every cryptic comment from his coach. It adds up. At some point, composure gives way to reality. And the reality is this. If you don't feel backed by your own coaching staff, it changes the way you play. It creates hesitation. It erodes trust. And it makes development nearly impossible. The fact that Sanders has shown as much growth as he has, despite that, is proof of how mentally tough he is. Stefanski, meanwhile, is playing a dangerous game. His coaching history is already being scrutinized. Questionable decisions, an over-reliance on system fits, and a tendency to favor familiarity over raw talent. And in this case, that pattern seems to be repeating. Instead of leaning into a promising rookie, he's retreating into his comfort zone. But the NFL isn't about comfort. It's about adjusting, evolving, and recognizing when a star is right in front of you. The longer Stefanski plays coy about Sanders, the more this starts to look like ego over execution. And that's a recipe for disaster, not just for the team, but for Stefanski's own future. What makes this even more frustrating is that Stefanski does know how to talk about elite talent. He's done it with Myles Garrett. When it comes to Garrett, Stefanski has no problem highlighting his impact, his leadership, his ability to take over games. He'll go into detail. He'll praise specifics. There's no hesitation. So the question becomes, why the double standard? Why is it so hard to give Sanders the same respect, the same acknowledgement? It's not about experience. It's about tone. It's about intention. Garrett earns that praise because he's trusted. If Sanders hasn't earned it by now, despite elevating the team, then what's really holding Stefanski back? Those close to the Browns have seen how Sanders approaches the game. He's first in, last out. He studies film. He works with receivers after practice. He's doing everything that veterans preach about building consistency. Yet it feels like none of that is being factored into the decision-making. Or worse, it's being ignored. And that's the kind of thing that breaks a locker room. Because players know. They see who's putting in the work. They know who's getting better. And when they watch that guy get passed over week after week, it sends a message. One that can fracture morale and poison culture. No matter how talented a roster is, if the team doesn't believe the coaches are making the right calls, everything falls apart. Their interactions on the sideline have been awkward. You don't need to be a body language expert to notice the stiffness. There's no fire, no energy, no open communication like you see with other coach QB duos who trust each other. It feels transactional, like two people fulfilling roles but not actually building anything. That's the core of this controversy. It's not just that Sanders isn't being fully supported. It's that Stefanski doesn't seem interested in building a relationship with him. And when your franchise quarterback is treated like a short-term solution, it shows. It's visible, and it's toxic. Back in preseason, after Sanders' first strong showing, he stood in front of the media and said all the right things, thanked the staff, talked about improving, mentioned how grateful he was for the reps. But watching that clip now, it's hard not to feel frustrated, because all that humility, all that promise, it should have led to opportunity. Instead, it led to walking on eggshells. And that's where the Browns are stuck, in limbo, with a quarterback who could be a star and a coach who seems allergic to fully acknowledging it. Meanwhile, other teams are watching closely. The second Sanders becomes available or even gives off the impression he wants out, there will be a line of GMs ready to build around him properly. At some point, you have to wonder how much more Sanders can take. He's answered every question with professionalism. He's taken every snap with composure. He's made plays when given the chance. But what do you do when that chance keeps getting snatched away before you can build any rhythm? The silence around his development is becoming louder than any stat line. Other rookies are being celebrated, hyped, handed the keys to their franchises. And here's Sanders, showing growth in a tough environment, doing everything asked, yet still being treated like a placeholder. That's not development. That's slow erosion. That's why Sean McDermott's comments keep making waves. Because he didn't just praise Sanders, he pointed out the ripple effect. He said outright that Sanders makes Cleveland more dangerous. That's a strategic admission. That's a defensive-minded coach acknowledging, we have to take this guy seriously. He changes how we play them. When a veteran coach makes a statement like that, it puts pressure on everyone, especially Stefanski. Because now, if he continues to downplay Sanders or make strange personnel decisions, he's not just second-guessing a rookie. He's contradicting the public scouting reports of one of the league's most respected coaches. Let's rewind through a few games. Against the Dolphins, the Browns needed a spark. The defense was doing its job, but the offense was stalling. Enters Sanders, who comes in, commands the huddle, gets a few crucial completions, and changes the tempo. Suddenly the team looks alive. And just as quickly he's pulled, the drive ends, the spark is extinguished, and no explanation is given. It's become a pattern. Sanders steps in, changes the energy, then disappears. It's like he's being allowed to audition, but never actually perform. And fans are starting to notice, because the games don't lie. When asked about the inconsistencies, Stefanski sticks to his script. We're looking at the film. We're still evaluating. It's about putting the team in the best position to win. But those answers ring hollow when the decisions don't match the evidence. You can't say a player makes your offense better and then bench him for entire quarters. At this point, it's fair to ask, what is Stefanski really afraid of? Is it losing control of the narrative? Is it admitting that his plan wasn't the right one all along? Because if the only thing holding Sanders back is coaching insecurity, then that's not a quarterback problem. That's a leadership crisis. Myles Garrett has been one of the few constants for the Browns. He dominates on defense. He's a vocal leader, and he's universally respected. You don't hear whispers of dysfunction around Garrett, because the coaching staff knows they need him. They treat him like a cornerstone. They game plan around him. And here's the irony. McDermott specifically praised Garrett in the same breath as Sanders. He sees them both as game changers. Yet the organization treats one like a franchise face and the other like a backup filling in until someone else is ready. That kind of inconsistency is how locker rooms break apart. In Browns versus Dolphins match, in the Dolphins game, Sanders made throws that only confident quarterbacks make. Tight windows, pressure in his face, timing routes with no hesitation. He took a few hits, got up, kept going. That's the kind of toughness that gets rewarded on other teams. On the Browns, it gets shrugged off. No detailed post-game review from Stefanski. No quote about Sanders' reads or poise. Just a generic, he did some good things. It's become the norm. Even when Sanders earns praise, it's sanitized, minimized, and that deliberate downplaying, That's what's raising red flags around the film doesn't lie. Week after week, Sanders' tape shows a quarterback growing, quicker decisions, improved footwork, better command of the pocket. You can see the progression. You can chart the confidence. What you can't see is a coaching staff building around it. That's where the disconnect becomes glaring. Because in the NFL, young quarterbacks don't grow in a vacuum. They grow when coaches believe in them, when the playbook adapts, when reps increase. Cleveland seems to be doing the opposite, waiting for perfection before granting belief. On the sideline, Stefanski looks every bit the controlled, even-keeled head coach. But images can't cover for culture. And the culture around this quarterback situation feels sterile. There's no visible trust, no mid-game adjustments based on Sanders' strengths, no in-game conversations that show real connection. Photos tell stories too. And in Cleveland, the story they're telling is one of distance. Between the coach and the quarterback, between the front office and the future, between talent and the trust it deserves. That's the most damning part. There's no real relationship between Stefanski and Sanders, at least not one you can point to. No sideline rapport, no animated strategy talks, no visible camaraderie. And in the NFL, that matters. Quarterbacks who grow into stars almost always have coaches who invest emotionally in their development. Not just XS and OS, but mentorship, belief, and advocacy. Sanders is navigating a critical year of growth, and doing it without that backing. That's the kind of neglect that leads to regret. Sanders has been asked about the dynamic before. He's dodged it with class, always circling back to the team. But there was one moment, one quote, where he let a little truth slip. When asked about how he's handled the shifting support, he said, "You just control what you can. Play when you're called. Keep your head down." That doesn't sound like a quarterback who feels empowered. That sounds like someone surviving a system, not thriving in it. And that's the heart of McDermott's subtle but stinging critique. The Browns have a potential star, but they're acting like it's a problem to manage instead of a gift to develop. There's only so long you can keep ignoring the obvious. Shedeur Sanders isn't just a rookie with potential. He's already shifting how defenses play and how coaches prepare. And while Sean McDermott is out here giving him the flowers he deserves, his own team is still stuck whispering behind closed doors. It's not just frustrating, it's exhausting to watch unfold. Because if the Browns don't get together, if Kevin Stefanski doesn't wake up to what's right in front of him, another franchise will. And when Sanders finally finds himself in a system that actually believes in him, Cleveland won't just be watching, they'll be regretting. If you're as fired up about this as we are, hit that like button, drop your take in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe, because this saga is far from over, and you won't want to miss what happens next.